Audio test 1, 2, 3. Audio test 1, 2, 3. Second audio test 1, 2, 3. Third audio test 1, 2, 3. French audio test 1, 2, 3. One, two, three.
You're gonna have to stand here and listen to all the good things and the amount of work. It's only 25 pages, folks, so just bear with. Vivi began her career here as a student with the former region of Ottawa-Carleton, working as an assistant construction inspector. From there, she went on to hold the leadership roles in planning and transportation, including serving as director of transportation planning as interim general manager of the city's planning department. Over 4 decades, Vivi has helped shape the projects and the policies that have guided Ottawa's growth and development. She led the first study to introduce public rail transit to Ottawa and helped complete Ottawa's first transportation master plan. She developed the plans for the Corkstown Footbridge, the first bridge across the Rideau Canal in 60 years. That's quite the accomplishment. She also helped bring Ontario's first segregated facility to downtown, setting Laurier Avenue, which is the city's first complete street, to Churchill Avenue, while contributing to the major city initiatives, from successful transportation master plans to Lansdowne 2.0 to development charges bylaws and the new zoning bylaw. Vivi has been, in every sense of the word, a city builder. But a career like Vivi's is much more about than the projects that could be listed on a resume. It's also the relationships that she's built, and I personally witnessed these. Vivi's always available and always speaking with staff and members. She truly believes in this city. She's also been constantly helpful and responsive to members of council, and we truly appreciate that. As chair of this committee, I've had the tremendous privilege of watching Vivi's dedication, creativity, and leadership firsthand. To spend 4 decades helping shape this fantastic city and leave such a lasting remark, this is something to be enormously proud of. Vivi, on behalf of the committee, thank you for your leadership and countless contributions to the City of Ottawa. Your impact has been felt here for many years to come. Joined by her husband, Wally. Where's Wally?
Sorry, he's not here.
Aww. Take that out. I'm here. I'll hang with you. I'm going to trash the notes here because I want to say thank you. I know I'm a little handful at times as chair as well. And over the last couple of terms that I've had this opportunity along with Vice Chair Kitts, you've been instrumental in a lot of the things that we do here in the city. It means a lot to me. I know members of the community feel very much the same. So let's give a big, warm round of applause to Vivi. I'm going to ask our city manager and our GM of planning to please come up for a photo. And then we'll proceed. I'm sure you'll want to say a couple of words. After 40 years, you have to say a couple of things, Vivi. A couple of things. So first, we'll start with a photo. Wonderful. Come on in. Maybe we can bring this over here now. It's beautiful. Oh, wow. Thank you very much. I'll hold this while you give a lovely speech.
Okay.
Well, would you move that down a little?
Yes, perfect. So thank you very much, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Wendy and Marcia, for this wonderful, unexpected celebration here. It's been a very wonderful, wonderful 40 years. I'm so blessed to be working with terrific colleagues, great leaders all around, and I couldn't do any of this work right here without the support of my teams and colleagues. It's all about connections. It's all about relationships as we get our work completed here and build trust amongst our the residents that we serve. So I'm I don't want to say too much because after 40 years, I've run out of words. But I do want to say that I've already started my second career, which is being a grandparent.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the best. Thank you. Thank you.
And I know that obviously our city manager would probably like to say just a couple of quick words, and then we'll grab a quick group photo with the entire committee, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Vivi, I want to say thank you on behalf of the senior leadership team and all of the staff and employees here at the city. You are truly a remarkable example of somebody who has built an amazing career. I think about 40 years. You started as a summer student. And so often I go to the advanced leadership graduation at Rec and Culture to talk about, what they learn here and the opportunities at the city. And you have shown everybody what you can do, and you have made an amazing impact. So thank you for everything over the last 40 years. We're going to miss you immensely, but we wish you the best in your grandparenting.
You guys need to come on. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
All right. So let's get right on with the meeting. So first, I'd like to acknowledge we're built on the unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The people of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have been nurtured and continue to be nurtured on this land. First of all, do we have any regrets today? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the committee coordinator to do roll call, please.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor DeRoche.
Here.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here. Here.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Present.
Councillor Luloff.
Bon matin, Monsieur le Président.
Councillor Skowski.
Present.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts.
Here.
Chair Tierney.
Present.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Coordinator. First of all, we have no declarations of interest. Confirmation of the minutes, 27 June 25th, 2026. Are these carried? Oh, there was one minor amendment? Yes.
Just a small correction. I was not present at the last meeting. It was my son's graduation. So just to
Oh.
switch me to regrets.
That amendment's noted. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Good to know. That's congratulations. So I'll move on to the next part, a response to inquiries. We have one. I think Councillor Brockington, if it's okay with the committee, just has a couple comments on the road markings. Maybe we'll just deal with that right now. Is that okay with committee? Great. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and to committee colleagues. This is an issue that is pertinent to my ward, and I understand other wards as well, and that's why I moved the inquiry, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. So in my ward, road paint markings, stop sign bars, multi-use pathway lines, train track X's on approach, traffic calming, messaging are all faded or non-existent. Not all, but there's significant enough that it prompted me to move this inquiry. And certainly the recent change, Chair, with the type of paint that we can use has only made things worse, and I acknowledge this. What I'm looking for staff, and I appreciate the response and the back and forth I've had with staff, there's two things I want to ask today. One is, how do we improve our service standards? How do we improve on our ability to get the paint painted sooner? And what does staff need going into the 2027 budget to assist them to get more paint painted sooner rather than later? Thank you, Chair.
Great. And I know Alain and I have been thick as thieves on this one, and Ottawa's been a leader on this front because I've been kind of mouthy on this one for obvious reasons. California standard on VOCs doesn't work in this environment. I'll just add real briefly, in my role as president of FCM, and I've had these discussions with you as well. The environment minister is very interested in possibly the concerns expressed by members across the entire country. When you have rural roads where the lines fade, when you have intersections and stop bars, as you mentioned, that are fading, the technology that was brought in, or the paint standard, wasn't designed for this environment. So I've certainly got the ear of the current government, maybe not the previous government, but this one certainly is taking stock in all the concerns, because there's legal ramifications as well about, hey, where's that stop bar? People aren't stopping. So it's really hurting municipalities, but that's just my preamble, and I'll turn the floor over to our GM.
Yes, Chair, and Councillor, I certainly appreciate the engagement, and it's something that you have flagged on several occasions, and I would say that you're probably not the only councillor also that's flagged this concern. So I think we're always working on three fronts. One is, as the Chair indicated, is the quality of the material, and we're always looking at different products. We currently use two different products when it comes to line painting now. There's also the reliability of the equipment. Again, these are specialized equipment that we're using, so basically the availability is always critical. And the last one, which is the one that's somewhat out of our control, is Mother Nature. There's only certain conditions where we can be painting lines, and when we get wet, especially summers like we've had this summer and we've had two past summers, it certainly has an impact on our ability to get the work done. Now, that being said, it is something that we are working through right now to see, okay, what are the resource adjustments that need to be considered as part of the upcoming budget process. So I suspect that there's going to be more discussions to come on that front. But what I can say is that we hear your concerns.
Mr. Chair, I thank staff for that, and I have no further questions now, other than part of my prep for the 2027 budget will be to reach out to the general manager and ask that main question: is what do you need reflected in the next year's budget to make improvements in the line painting? So we'll continue that conversation. I appreciate the work your staff are doing. Thanks, Chair.
Really appreciate that very much, Councillor Brockington. It's all on our minds, and you're hearing it firsthand from your municipalities you represent, and I'm hearing it from mine as well. So thank you for that, and something we'll have to keep in mind. We have other response to inquiries. Is anyone lifting any other inquiry responses? Seeing none. I'm going to go on. We have one item really on the agenda, but I'm just going to go through the rest of this rather than hold people up for a couple others. We have the status update, Public Works Infrastructure Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending August 18th, 2026. Anyone want this put onto the agenda, or is this item received? Received. And I'm actually going to jump ahead. We also have the So we're at the end, we're gonna quickly discuss the feasibility of transportation infrastructure condition development approvals. But I did want to go down, there was a motion as other business, and with the permission of committee, I'm just gonna move this one to the table. It's something that's of concern to Councillor Dudas. Is there any concern if we add this to the agenda and just deal with it now? It's great, thank you. Councillor Dudas, did you want to proceed?
Thank you very much, Chair. I will read this in. Whereas local residents have raised ongoing concerns regarding vehicles making a left turn from eastbound St. Joseph Boulevard onto northbound Orleans Boulevard. And whereas staff have reviewed the location for permissive protective signal phasing and it did not meet the required warrants for installation in the eastbound direction. Whereas staff have since confirmed that network screening determined that eastbound and westbound left turn collisions at this intersection are overrepresented and therefore would benefit from the implementation of a fully protected left turn signal phasing. Whereas fully protected left turn signal phasing eliminates conflicts with opposing traffic movements, significantly reducing the frequency of left turn collisions. And whereas a preliminary operational review by traffic services staff have already determined that implementing fully protected left turn signal phasing at this location requires physical changes to the intersection. And whereas functional planning, design, and construction of physical changes required for implementation of fully protected left turns is funded by the Road Safety Action Plan when locations have been identified through the established network screening process. And whereas there is a number of locations identified through network screening for fully protected lefts that are awaiting funding, and whereas the Road Safety Action Plan budget has been impacted by the loss of revenue associated with the cancellation of the ASC program, and whereas resolving the eastbound left turn concerns at St. Joseph Boulevard and Orleans Boulevard remains one of the most frequently requested traffic improvements in Ward 2. Therefore be resolved that traffic services be directed to undertake the necessary functional planning work to determine the specific physical changes required to implement eastbound and westbound fully protected left turn signal phasing at the intersection of St. Joseph Boulevard and Orleans Boulevard as expeditiously as possible, and therefore be further resolved that staff be directed to provide regular updates to the Ward 2 Councillor on this work.
Great. Anyone have any issues with that? I don't see any here, Laura. I think you're in the safe zone. So is that item carried? Great, thank you. So we'll go back to the one substantive item and then we'll go back to the one for Vice Chair Kitts as well. So we do have a presentation on Gladstone Avenue and Gilmore Street cycling improvements. So I'll get staff to come forward with that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Cal Hackla from the Active Transportation Planning Group, and I'm joined by Deb Kleitman, the Acting Director of Transportation Planning, and we're going to talk about the Gladstone and Gilmore cycling project today. Next slide. So both the Gladstone Avenue and Gilmore Street cycling projects are identified in the Transportation Master Plan. And part of the reason they're included in that plan is because there's a history of major collisions involving cyclists and pedestrians along that corridor. So there was one in 2023 that led to a motion for us to advance this project, which is why we're here today. Next slide. So even though this corridor does not have cycling facilities on it, there are already many people that use it for cycling just because it provides a key connection in the network between communities. As I mentioned, there is a history of collisions on this corridor with about 40 with pedestrians and almost 60 with cyclists in that 10 years between 2013 and 2022. It's also important to note that in this part of the city, almost half of people or households do not have access to a car, so they need to have other options for getting around. And the Transportation Master Plan, the projects that were included there did have strong support from the community for both these corridors. Next slide, please. So some of the key features of the recommended design include adding protected or buffered bike lanes along Gladstone Avenue between Preston Street and Arthur Street So that's the thicker yellow line on the map. That includes some significant intersection improvements at both Rochester and Booth Streets, or what we call protected intersections that are good for cyclists. We are also adding a westbound bike lane on Gladstone west of Preston to the Corso Italia station. And on Gilmore Street, we're adding a westbound contraflow bike lane. Right now, it's a one-way eastbound street, but we're allowing bikes to ride in the opposite direction. And that will have a new signal at Bronson to allow those cyclists to continue on to get to the Gladstone corridor via local streets on Christie and Arthur Streets. Next slide, please. So after developing that design, we did go out to the public to get their point of view. So we held an open house and did an online engagement with a survey back in September of 2025. We also reached out more recently in July to several businesses along the corridor, both on Gladstone and near the Gilmore corridor, to get their views. We got very good feedback on the survey with over 500 responses and very positive response of people positive towards the cycling improvements we were making. We did receive some other feedback related to the corridor, particularly about us continuing the cycling project further east, or a desire to have us continue that cycling project further east on Gladstone. There was also some concern about removing parking in the area of businesses, and also some concern about whether the corridor would be winter maintained. Next slide, please. So the project does have positive implications for both pedestrians and cyclists along the corridor, improving safety, making some accessibility improvements at some of the intersections and bus stops, and also just making that overall connectivity improvement for cyclists. At the same time, we're improving transit by, we're consolidating a few bus stops, but also improving 4 different bus stops along the corridor to modern standards, accessibility treatments, and how they interact with cyclists, which will in turn improve reliability of transit along this corridor. One of the other things that the motion requested was to look at the truck route through Gladstone. Right now, there's Gladstone is a truck route between Preston and Bronson. So our recommendation is to retain the section between Preston and Rochester, because that provides a key link from Preston Street to Rochester and then on to Highway 417. So that's a more important link in the network. But we're intending to remove the section of the truck route east of Rochester to Bronson, because there are other routes to get to Highway 417 for that section. From a traffic point of view, there is not a significant impact on traffic. We're not removing any travel lanes as part of this project. The main impact comes from the installation of fully protected turns at a location at Rochester Street to improve safety. So that will result in some longer queues, which could have a minor impact on traffic at that location. Next slide, please. I mentioned that parking was a concern that was addressed through the public engagement. So the project in the end will remove approximately 11 of the 28 spaces that are currently on Gladstone through that corridor. This is a change from the original proposal where we were intending to remove all the spaces. So after having that engagement, we've been able to go back and find other spaces that we were able to keep along the corridor. There is also a city parking lot that's within a few hundred meters of the corridor that provides another option. And we also looked at general parking within the area on many of the side streets and found that there is some availability there during all periods of the day. Despite that, we also looked at adding more parking on some of those side streets. So we found approximately 30 spaces within a few blocks, or within one block of Gladstone, that we'll be able to use for parking to increase that supply. On Gilmore, we're able to find other alternate spaces there as well, because adding that contraflow lane means we have to move parking from the north side of the street to the south side of the street, which means that a few spaces might be lost in some areas, but added in other areas due to the presence of driveways and fire hydrants, that kind of thing. But overall, there's no loss of parking on Gilmore. And same with loading spaces. We're keeping all the loading spaces along the corridor. Some of them are near pharmacies and specific businesses, that kind of thing. Next slide, please. So the high level costs that we've identified for this project is around 5.9 million, and that will be requested through future budget cycles when this project moves forward. We recommend that it be prioritized for implementation and to move to the next stage of design based on that previous council direction and the motion, as well as that collision history. And also note that there are two other integrated renewal projects that intersect with this corridor on both Booth and Rochester Street that are ongoing. So we will try to coordinate with those projects as well to improve cost effectiveness and save the city money. Next slide, please. So we recommend that committee and council direct staff to finalize that design that's shown in the report, and also to remove that section of the truck route along Gladstone Avenue between Rochester and Bronson. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your presentation today. We do have 5 delegations. Guillaume Gillard, are you present or online?
Hi, I'm online. Can you hear me?
Great. You're familiar. Your presentation is on the screen. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Chers conseillères, chers conseillers, je vous remercie de me permettre de m'exprimer aujourd'hui au sujet de la piste cyclable Gladstone-Gilmore. I've heard some of you speak French before, but I'm going to switch to English, so please excuse any mistakes I might make. I am here today wearing 2 hats, my Back-Ottawa board member hat and my Gladstone resident hat, and I will use both to support this project and to make 3 specific recommendations. I'll start by stating the obvious. There is a strong need for a safe east-west connection in the area, and this bikeway will at least partly address this, thanks to the work of the active transportation planning team. The 2022 Origin Destination Survey showed that almost half of the households living in the downtown core transit don't own a car, which translates into 2/3 of the residents. Next slide, please. As the map shows, this transit includes all the neighborhoods served by that bikeway, and the city has a duty to provide those people with safe and convenient options to get around. Next slide, please. Moreover, the official plan and the TMP make it very clear that one of the city's most important goals is to reduce the modal share of private cars. This bikeway perfectly aligns with those goals. Therefore, Bike Ottawa is happy to see this project move forward, even with its limitations and compromises. And given the current provincial political context, if this is the best we can get at the moment, it needs to be built now. On to our recommendations. The first one concerns the Bronson crossing. Bronson is notoriously unwelcoming to anything except cars, and crossing it is one of the biggest barriers of an east-west route. Next slide, please. I didn't have to look very far in the past for an example, as a pedestrian was injured there not 2 weeks ago. Next slide, please. In order to make it less daunting, the lights at Christie and Gilmore must be timed so that 1, that section of Bronson stays clear of motor vehicles during the red light, and 2, it gives enough time to the slowest riders, by which I mean kids, to get across safely. I was going to say that safety must be the primary consideration here, but I hope that this is always the case. Can you please go through the next 3 slides one by one? Next one. Thank you. Okay, so this was a fairly crude rendering, but I hope it clarifies what I meant. Our second recommendation is that the city commits to a timeline for a full rebuild of Gladstone, which will include protected bike lanes. The proposed bikeway, despite its qualities, can only be a temporary fix. The places people want or need to go are on Gladstone. Next slide, please. Whether I want to send a package for my mom's birthday, get my saucisson fix, or find a baguette to pair with this saucisson, it's all happening on Gladstone. This means that bike lanes on Gladstone are still very much needed, and local residents have clearly expressed as much. Next slide, please. The rally they organized last October to ask for proper infrastructure directly on Gladstone is a testimony of that. Next slide, please. Even the mayor agrees. Our last recommendation addresses what I would call the most glaring missed opportunity of the project: the lack of secure infrastructure connecting this bikeway to the Trillium Path and to Parkdale. The Gladstone Trillium intersection is already an important transportation hub with the train station and the Trillium Path, and thousands of residents are planned to move in the immediate vicinity thanks to the new homes being built and planned. The Gladstone-Preston intersection was also part of the review of high-volume intersection study from 2020. And this study found that all the persons cycling that were involved in a collision were making a through movement on Gladstone, and 3/4 of them were hit by a driver making a turn. Yet, there is only paint planned between Preston and the Trillium Path, and paint is not infrastructure, and fades very quickly, as noted by Councillor Brockington earlier. This is especially dangerous going downhill towards Preston, as drivers routinely go 10 kilometers per hour above the posted speed limit. Next slide, please. I took those pictures yesterday to showcase the permanent speeding on that street, and that was in a span of 5 minutes. So the planned painted markings are designed to encourage bike riders to take the lane. Well, I'm a confident rider, and I usually ride at the speed limit there, and I take the lane as I don't trust drivers to give me a wide berth. And these past months only, I've been threatened twice by drivers who felt the posted speed limit didn't apply to them. This is why we urge you to direct city staff to work on a proper redesign of Gladstone west of Preston and up to Parkdale. Right now, the only two east-west options in this neighborhood are Gladstone and Somerset, and none of them are satisfactory. Next slide, please. To summarize, we support this project, and we ask you to ensure safe signal timing at Bronson, to commit to a timeline for rebuilding Gladstone, and to direct staff to properly connect this bikeway to the Trillium Path and to Parkdale. Je vous remercie de votre attention et je suis à votre disposition si vous avez des questions. If you have any questions, I am at your disposal.
Bien, merci. Une question pour conseiller Truster.
Hi, Guillaume. I just wanted to say thank you and Bike Ottawa for your advocacy. I will have some questions about the signal timing, but I've received some guarantees from staff on that, but I'll get it on the record. I understand that little jog onto Bronson is a concern, but we can, I'll ask some more detailed questions about how they're going to handle that with signal timing. I really appreciate it. So just to be really clear, Bike Ottawa's position is you are advocating for this project to be advanced.
Yes.
Okay.
We support this project.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your advocacy.
Thank you.
Grand merci. Toutes les questions? Oui. Thank you very much for coming out today. Our next delegation is Emily Barrett.
Good morning. My name is Emily Barrett, and I live just a couple blocks from Gladstone Avenue. My household, which consists of myself, my husband, and our toddler, primarily get around by bike, but we also walk, take transit, and drive. In the past year, we've started biking with our toddler, who's 16 months old. The Gladstone-Gilmore Bikeway will be hugely beneficial for our household and for many other people in Centertown, and I'm here to speak in favor of the project. The main point I wish to stress to the committee is that there is currently no continuous, safe, and direct east-west route for cyclists in this part of Centertown. The cycling facilities proposed by this project represent an essential cycling network link, especially between the Trillium Pathway and Booth, as there is no viable side street detour to get around this section of Gladstone. My family is forced to choose between several not-so-great options almost daily. Do we take the safer but considerably longer way home? Or do we risk biking on Gladstone? We especially feel the weight of this decision when we are biking with our toddler. To give you a concrete example, currently we are taking our daughter to swimming lessons at Plant Bath. The direct route from our home involves taking Gladstone down the Trillium Pathway and is about 2.3 kilometers door to door. However, when time permits, we are increasingly choosing to take what we call the scenic route, which takes us about twice as long. This involves either a major detour to the south via Dow's Lake, 5th Avenue and Percy, or to the north via the pathways north of Scott to Laurier and back to Percy. This is all to avoid the most dangerous sections of Gladstone. If you were driving on the 417 heading west to Bronson, this would be the equivalent of getting off at Metcalfe, heading north, taking Laurier West, and then taking Bronson south to rejoin the 417 westbound. It sounds ridiculous, but my family does the bike equivalent of this detour almost daily. I consider myself to be an experienced urban cyclist, and I go out of my way to avoid biking on Gladstone as much as possible. When my family does decide to bike along the stretch of Gladstone with our daughter in tow, we do so in a state of hypervigilance. This isn't paranoia. This is based on real experience, too many close calls with dooring, with close passing, with cars that are running stop signs or rushing to make a red light or a right turn. My husband was right hooked a handful of years ago at the intersection of Gladstone and Rochester. That's the same intersection where a cyclist was seriously injured by a right-turning truck several years ago. Fortunately, he got away with just a few scratches. I am anxious about what our future as a car-free household looks like if this project does not go ahead. Our daughter will be attending the new French public school near Plant in a few years. How will we manage drop-off and swimming lessons when she's old enough to ride her own bike? As things currently stand, I cannot imagine taking a small child on a bike on Gladstone Avenue without safe cycling facilities. If short east-west trips cannot be done safely by bike, we could very well end up being one more car on the road stuck in traffic and looking for parking. Before wrapping up, I have mostly talked about Gladstone, but I want to briefly mention that the addition of a contraflow lane on Gilmore will be hugely beneficial to my household and will make it easier to connect to existing bikeways. 2 thumbs up for that. In closing, I want to reiterate my support for the Gladstone-Gilmore Bikeway, and I encourage the committee to approve the recommended cycling infrastructure improvements. Lastly, as someone who resides off of Gladstone, east of Bronson, along a stretch that will not be getting cycling facilities under this project, I hope that this is a first step towards making all of Gladstone safe for cyclists of all abilities. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd also like to thank Councillor Troster for her advocacy and support for this project.
Great delegation. Councillor Trotter.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for your delegation. My daughter is now 14 and riding on her own on Gladstone, which is terrifying.
Terrifying.
She went to the Gladstone Theater for summer camp, but I insisted on riding a certain stretch of it with her to make sure she would be safe. And that visceral fear when you are carrying your child on your bike is an experiential, you sort of come to the light moment when it comes to cycling safety. So I really appreciate your advocacy. And to be very clear, this would not have been advanced this quickly without community advocacy. It was a direct result of the rally that happened in June 2023 after a woman was seriously injured in the exact same accident that your spouse had. So I'm glad he's okay. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you for coming out. Next delegation is Marco Majukovic. Marco? Oh, online. Okay, great. We'll just bring Marco into the room and then set him up.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Hello there. My name is Marco, and I'm a resident of Centertown. I've lived in the area for about 5 years at this point, and like others have mentioned, I don't own a vehicle either. I rely on my bike, and for the vast majority of my trips, although I do also walk and take transit and even use a car when those make sense for my trips. I want to start off by saying I appreciate the work that went into trying to create a safer street on Gladstone, as it's one of the worst streets I currently have the displeasure of using. I do think this would be a significant improvement over the current Gladstone, but I also can't help but feel that we don't want to push the envelope too much whenever it comes to safety for improvements for cyclists. This project is fairly good in a vacuum, but taken with the recent news about Kent Street cycling lane being fully removed, it leaves me feeling like we will never make meaningful progress towards safer streets in my lifetime. I also think the city needs to be more willing to do quick fixes to streets, similar to what they're doing here, without waiting for full rebuilds of a road. Some of these streets won't be changed for decades, but that's a choice that we make, and it doesn't have to be that way. Personally, my experience with Gladstone is extremely negative. My partner and I have been using it for quite a while until we've had multiple instances of coming within inches of cars hitting us before we decided to just never use the road again. Like the previous delegate, we often go well out of our way to get to where we're going, often going up O'Connor all the way to Laurier and then going back basically down south on other local streets. Much of the language in these reports is couched with trying to make sure that nobody else has to change anything about their habits in order to ensure safety for vulnerable road users. We saw that parking was supposed to be fully removed, but then added back because it might be slightly inconvenient for someone to have to walk a little bit extra to get to where they're going. We almost completely write off changes simply due to the fact that it might slightly inconvenience someone in a vehicle. To me, this indicates a mindset with which we approach these projects, which severely hampers our ability to actually make meaningful progress. I hope we can work towards a shifting mindset to allow the design of safer roads. Often when people talk about how great cycling is in Ottawa, they typically point to the amazing work that has been done by the NCC to connect much of our city with fully separated and safe bike paths. The unfortunate reality is that the same thing can't be said about the rest of our city infrastructure. The NCC paths, like the river pathway, the pathways along the canal, the experimental farm, and more, are amazing connections for people cycling, but they're often not ideal because while they may be beautiful and separated, they often don't lead you directly to where you need to go. And as anyone taking transportation or transit, one of the most important things is getting to the destination that you want to get to. Gladstone has the potential to do exactly that, but instead cyclists are forced to reroute elsewhere. Because these paths are almost always never safe and direct to where I need to go, I often weigh adding an extra 30 to 40% extra time and length to my commute or getting there faster, but risking severe injury or death. Even if I take the detour, I often still have to end up on dangerous roads for some part of my trip. The constant rerouting along side streets, such as what's seen here in this proposal, is emblematic of a city that doesn't take safety of a vulnerable road user as a priority of theirs. It seems like we can never fathom a world where someone driving might be slightly inconvenienced, and that it must always be the vulnerable road users that have to be inconvenienced to maintain the status quo. The report indicates that the goal is to have a connection going east-west from west of Preston to east of Elgin. I would argue this connection should be one continuous route rather than a winding path along multiple different roads. Drivers would rightfully lose their mind if they had to constantly reroute every couple blocks just to get through their neighborhood, but we find that perfectly acceptable for cyclists. I strongly urge the city to eventually continue the Gladstone bike path all the way east to Elgin Street so that cyclists don't have to take detours around multiple dangerous streets to get to where they need to go. I would also urge you to get to work on this as soon as possible. Looking at the design document, the proposed intersection at Rochester seems to be severely limited in terms of the actual physical protections, opting for mostly paint on the road and wide turn radiuses, for what I can only assume is to allow trucks to make the turn onto Rochester to get to the highway. To me, this seems like a severe flaw in the plan. We're severely compromising on the safety of pedestrians and cyclists at arguably one of the most dangerous parts of this whole project, just so that trucks can have an easier option to get to the highway. If you look at the urban trucking map for downtown Ottawa, there's pretty much the whole area is covered in routes for the trucks to take. So to me, it doesn't seem like we should be compromising on the safety of this intersection just so they have one more connection to the highway. In case you weren't familiar, as was mentioned, downtown has the lowest rates of car ownership, where roughly 66% of people living here don't own a car, and the vast majority of trips are made outside of a personal vehicle. Yet even acknowledging that, the actual infrastructure for people outside of a vehicle is pitiful. There are currently only 2 protected bike lanes in all the downtown core, which are on Laurier and O'Connor, and there's only 1 single bike lane that goes east-west in the downtown Ottawa. We should be taking every step we can to alleviate this and align the roads to be closer to the people traveling here and how they actually use them. In summary, I hope that the city can, 1, prioritize extending the Gladstone bike lanes all the way east to Elgin Street rather than ending at Arthur Street, and we should not be waiting until the last possible minute to do road work in that area. 2, we should remove the Rochester Street north of the highway from the urban trucking route so that the intersection at Rochester can be made significantly safer with actual full protected intersections, and have smaller turn radiuses to slow down speeds of cars turning. And 3, remove the dozen or so parking spots that are currently being attempted to be kept by this plan. Instead, use the space for elements that would improve the safety and livability of Gladstone, such as street trees, narrow roads, wider sidewalks, or anything else like that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for your delegation today. Seeing no questions, I will move on to our next delegation, Andrew Douglas. Oh, Andrew's in real life. Terrific. Great. I'll commend you on your shirt first before I tell you the rules. You have
I'm
5.
on the air now.
Yes. Yeah, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours, Andrew.
I would like to thank Ariel and Marcella for allowing me to come here and encouraging me. And I have tabled a document with the committee because I'm a strong believer in written documents that speak for themselves. I really ask the members of the committee to read that before they make a decision on going further with the Gilmore crossing. We've heard today that 500 people use Gladstone Avenue. We've heard today from others, they want to have a route along Gladstone Avenue. The council, as I understand it, recommended that cycling be facilitated on Gladstone Avenue. We've heard that cyclists don't like to go out of their way. All of that I will describe in detail in the report I sent to you as to why Gilmore is a bad idea. I want you to consider that before we proceed. This project on Gladstone for the protected lanes, there's no argument. Everybody wants it, every cyclist wants it, and it won't interrupt or bother any motorist. But the Gilmore crossing is entirely different. Now, there is no option given to us in this report about facilitating cycling on Gladstone. Facilitating does not have to mean protected lanes. There are also mistakes in the report that say, for example, there's large volume of turning vehicles approaching Bronson on Gladstone from the west. That's not true because those side streets just west of Bronson, one's a dead end and one's only 2 blocks long. Very few people turn on those streets. So there's mistakes in the written documents that propose this project. That's my position. You've heard it from other cyclists as well, so I don't think I need 5 minutes. That's sufficient if you can read the document I submitted. Oh, I did bring my prop so that you won't think I'm an enraged motorist sent by Doug Ford. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. And just Councillor Troster.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming. I will have some questions for staff. And what I like to say is that perfect is the enemy of good. So being able to advance this project now when it actually wouldn't have been on the agenda for 30 or more years is a start. It's certainly not the end though. And you know that I'm like a dog with a bone when it comes to advocacy. So I'm taking what you're saying very seriously and I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. And reassurance, we do have the document. It's on our drive for reading between whether it's this committee or council. So thank you for coming out today.
Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have our final delegation, Jacob Hendren. In real life as well. Great. Thanks for coming out, Jacob.
Bonjour, conseiller. Good morning, councillors. Thank you for having me this morning. Would you believe me if I told you that Ottawa was one of the best cycling cities on the continent when it comes to one particular metric, the intersections? Montreal is a better cycling city than Ottawa, there's no question. But Montreal cyclists are envious of our protected intersections. It's a fantastic policy. It's also really great that the policy is to consider cycling automatically whenever a road is up for renewal, whenever sewers are to be replaced. It, I think, has helped us to avoid some of the kind of vitriolic backlash that you see in other cities, like Toronto, for example, did in the news lately. So I think that's a very good policy. I think we should be very proud of what we do have, and these protected intersections are really great. I think this project kind of falls short of that, especially the part that's east of Arthur Street. But to be clear, it's a good project that should be advanced, and it's great that it's being advanced at this stage instead of later. But I just have a few concerns that I wanted to address. In the revised document, there's now a bus stop in the middle of the bike lane on Gladstone, just west of Arthur Street. It was moved from east of Arthur Street into the bike lane where it was previously east of the bike lane, so I'm confused about that. I think the design in front of Corso Italia is unfortunate. I don't really understand how it happened that the O train was closed for 5 years and the station was being built and cycling wasn't considered then, when it would have been a great opportunity to add protected lanes on that part of Gladstone at that time, but it's okay. I think one of the previous delegates mentioned that the two, actually both of the protected intersections, the one at Rochester and Booth, have been slightly diminished in their protection in the new revised document versus the original one. I assume to accommodate truck turns. And of course, the Bronson connection, I understand the signal thing, that's very good. However, there's inevitably going to be drivers who run red lights, who make illegal turns. I think there's also going to be cyclists who are confused and who either continue down Bronson without realizing you're supposed to turn off, thinking they saw one Shero that said it's safe, so okay, I'll just keep going down Bronson, which is a bad idea. And so I don't think it's ideal. I don't think it is very all ages and abilities for bike infrastructure. So I just wanted to kind of put in the record. I'm glad to hear that there seems to be a will to improve this further going forward. So I just wanted to have a few ideas that I wanted to make sure get put in the record. I'm assuming that they've all been considered, but I look at the lane, the Bronson and Gladstone intersection. I saw in the what we learned report that that's identified as being too narrow to make it protected now, but I noticed there's an empty lot, a gas station with a fairly large lawn between the gas station and the roadway, and McNabb Park with, again, a fairly large buffer zone between the fenced park and the roadway. So I'm thinking it would make a lot of sense for the city to look into acquiring tiny little slivers of those three properties to make the intersection just wide enough to make it protected. And I think that should be done now before something gets built on that empty lot. If you look at it on a map, it's kind of like, it's not a straight line. And I think that would be very wise for the city to look into acquiring that piece of land sooner rather than later to be able to build, to make that intersection protected like so many other intersections in the city are. I understand that Toronto, as a way to get to kind of circumvent Bill 60, has looked into narrower traveling vehicle lanes. I think that should be considered as well. It's I'm not sure if that has been considered or not, but that seems like a wise idea. And I mean, I think the fact that 10 parking spaces have been able to be sort of conjured out of thin air in the new revised report, I do think that something similar could probably be done to find ways to extend the bike lanes further down Gladstone. And I would say something worth considering is taking advantage of a wonderful asset that we have called McNabb Park. Wouldn't it be possible to have a multi-use path through the park? If we get the bike lanes just to Bronson, people could use the park to get to, to get to the part on Gilmore. I'm from Halifax, and in the Halifax AAA network, we have the Dartmouth Common has that, right? It has a multi-use path through the park. So those are a few suggestions. I do think the stop consolidation is good. So there are some good things about the project, but I just want to put in the record these suggested improvements going forward.
Yeah, thank you for coming out, Jacob. And I love Halifax, by the way. I was just out there recently for a meeting, and I'll tell you,
Good spot.
They got some cool cycling out there too. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's a good suggestion of McNabb Park. It does get really tricky. There are so many trees in that park, and they're very valuable to the community. But it's certainly something to think about. And a tricky part on the other side of the Bronson too is there's a lot of row housing with street parking permits where they don't have any parking of their own and no access through the back, right? So that's the difficulty with retrofitting in like a historical road. But I'll have some questions for staff to clarify some of your suggestions, and I really appreciate you coming out today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Merci
you.
beaucoup.
So we'll go to questions to staff at this point. Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you so much for all your work on this project. It's been astronomical, and also the mayor's office and John Light, who's here. This has been a really tricky project. So just to be clear, do we have a sense of what it might cost if we were try to extend the bike lane entirely along Gladstone? Do you have a ballpark figure? Because right now this project is coming in around $5.9 million.
I don't have a ballpark figure for extending it further east, if that's what you mean. I think our biggest challenge is just the constraints along the corridor, like at Bronson, where we don't have land to be able to get bike lanes through there. We would have to purchase land, and that would be very expensive. And that we would foresee that happening at several of the intersections along the rest of Gladstone going east through Centertown. We'd have a very similar issue where we would have physical constraints within the right of way, and we'd have to either purchase land or an entire building, just given the built up nature of the corridor.
I can just speak to the fixes we're making right now at Laurier and Elgin that have taken way too long. We have to negotiate with both the federal and the provincial government because there's the courthouse on one side and Confederation Park on the other, and it added an extra year and a lot of money to the project just to be able to like deal with those slivers of land. So thank you for that. Could you please explain to me how the signal timing is going to work for the jag onto Bronson? Because my understanding is that cars will not be interacting with cyclists.
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, we're routing cyclists via Christie Street, where there's an existing signal, and then Gilmore Street, where we're going to add a new signal at Bronson. And there's about 30 meters between those two streets, so it will require cyclists to ride on a short section of Bronson. So the signal timing will be designed to minimize interaction between cyclists and drivers on Bronson. And the way we will do that is by having a red light show for Bronson at both of those signals. So traffic will not be moving on Bronson. When Christie and Gilmore will see a green light, allowing cyclists to proceed on both of those streets from one to the other during that time when cars on Bronson are not moving. In addition, our intent is to allow the leading signal on Bronson to start earlier to make sure that if any cars get caught between the two signals on Bronson, that they're allowed to proceed and get out of the way of cyclists and allow cyclists to complete that turn from one street to the other.
And I assume you'll be monitoring it after it opens to see if there's.
Yeah, and this will all have to be confirmed at detailed design, of course, but yeah, we will monitor it to see exactly how that's working and what additional measures might be needed.
Okay, can you explain this bus stop in the bike lane situation, or where the bus stop was moved to and how you'll ensure cycling safety there?
Yeah, so there's currently a bus stop on Gladstone going westbound just east of Arthur. As part of this project, OC Transpo requested that move west of Arthur because their general policy is to have what we call far side bus stops. So it's on the far side of the intersection. Unfortunately, there's not enough space to provide our preferred design of how that bus stop and bike infrastructure interacts with each other. We don't have enough space within the corridor to do that. So the alternative in those situations is to have the bus pull into the bike lane, which we have at many other locations around the city where we have painted bike lanes. We felt that this was a preferred option rather than having it a location where cars might pull into that lane. Having buses that only come by every 15 minutes or so is preferred to other vehicles.
Okay, just a couple more questions. So I know, and to be clear, there's a school in this zone, there's a workplace, there's longstanding businesses, some of which do need to have pickups and drop-offs. So I understand you did a lot of work to allow that to happen. But any of the extra parking spots you were able to find or add back in, do they compromise cycling safety in any way? Do they interrupt the flow of the actual bike lane?
No, we've taken care to make sure that those parking spaces that we found are located in the boulevard or in a new parking bay or other locations where it won't interact with the cycling facilities.
Okay, so you're not moving around parked cars in any way?
No.
Okay, great. And just the last question, a concern that I heard was for the contraflow piece on Gilmore. Concern about winter maintenance because we do get a lot of snow. And will the Gilmore section of this bikeway be given winter transportation snow clearing priority like the Laurier bike lane, for example?
So our intent is to have both Gladstone and Gilmore added to the winter cycling network. However, we do still have to have further discussions with road operations to confirm exactly what that means and what level they will get. So that will be done during the detailed design phase.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll get back on the list later just to close.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Garr.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the report. I just had a quick question if you could clarify between Preston and the Trillium pathway, the reason that bike lanes can't be included there. Is that a restriction because of the width, the right-of-way width there?
Yeah, that's an extremely constrained section where the right-of-way is only, I believe, 14 meters wide. And there's also existing hydro poles on one side of the street. So it makes it incredibly challenging to get cycling facilities within that existing right-of-way and avoiding the need to expropriate land or purchase land in an area where it's already built up. We have buildings on both sides of the street. So that was the key driver and why we designed it and made the decisions that we did on that section.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate it too. I think it was our first delegation mentioned the high speeds along that stretch. So could traffic calming, I don't know, speed cushions or something be a consideration there in the final design?
Yeah, I think we've heard that from some of the community before, and it is something that we will look at through detailed design to see if perhaps a speed cushion or something could be done there to help slow down traffic.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess just a comment, it's looking at the street grid, it's interesting that Gladstone is the only street that goes from Preston all the way past Elgin. There's Gilmore that goes from Bronson to past Elgin. McLeod would as well, just south, but I think Gilmore is the best option given the constraints that you've identified on Gladstone. So as the local councillor said, it's not perfect, but I think it's the best of the options available. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor DeRoche.
Thank you, Chair. Wanted to ask, I know this is the design phase presently. You talked about potentially it would be in a future budget. What would be the source of funding for those? Is this a DC related project, or does this come out of the cycling budget? It's not a integrated road project. What potentially would be the source of funding for this?
Yeah, it would not be an integrated renewal, with the exception of tying into the locations at at Booth and Rochester, which do have an integrated renewal. So we may be able to coordinate with those projects at those two locations. But the rest of it would come out of the cycling facilities program budget, which is partially funded through DCs.
Okay. So in the DC, you're using a road budget, the road budget DC though, for this project, not like there's no cycling DC. It's a road budget DC.
I don't believe it's through road budget DC. I think it's a dedicated cycling DC, but perhaps Deb can confirm that.
Through the chair, the roads and related services includes a variety of different types of transportation infrastructure projects, kind of on or adjacent to roads to support growth. And so the road capacity projects are one type of project. And the cycling facilities program is also, the cycling facilities projects identified in the transportation master plan are also a line item within roads and related. There is a sort of finite 10-year budget of the expectation of the amount of funding to deliver those projects. And I think just to add on, the kind of current project is identified in the transportation master plan as one of those TMP cycling projects. We don't have another Gladstone project to go to the east at this time. So a new project could be identified in a future transportation master plan to extend that connection as a kind of standalone retrofit project, the way this one is happening. If an integrated renewal was to occur, that would provide a different opportunity.
Okay, so just to be clear, so some of it is the development charge, and then other is the infrastructure for cycling, which there's projects right across the city, and this one would need to be sort of assessed against some of the other ones that are potentially construction ready at that time. Is that how I understand it?
Yes.
Okay. The recommendation to remove it from the truck network, I understand the impetus behind that. I have some reservations about making tweaks like this to the truck plan without looking at kind of the system-wide perspective that the trucks need to go somewhere. And those people aren't delegating today because potentially they're not aware of what the impacts of that would be. So I'm wondering if you've looked at kind of what is the impact of taking this truck out of the taking this network out of the truck routes, and what's the impact on streets that, again, people may not have the awareness that this is going to be this situation.
Yeah, so the section that we're proposing to remove from the truck network is between Rochester and Bronson, and on that section, we found there's approximately 15 trucks of all sizes per hour that use that.
Sorry,
so
what,
that's
15?
not just transport trucks, but garbage trucks, other kinds of trucks. And for that section, there are also multiple alternative routes. So for example, we have Albert Street, we have Somerset Street, we have Queensway, Carling Avenue, that are all parallel to that corridor. So we felt that there are alternate routes that truck traffic can be redistributed along without having major impacts on any of those corridors.
Okay. Yeah, because again, my concern is that when you do these truck network situations, that there's impacts in the surrounding area, as much as this may be what you consider to be a small amount. I think it's always better to look at sort of the truck routes by looking at the system overall. So thank you for those answers. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Definitely thank you to the mover for bringing this and to the delegates for advocating for it. I certainly am interested in supporting this project. I was at that demonstration 2 years ago on Gladstone, and I recognize the strong community desire for it. I just have a few questions, and none of them are to question my support for the project. I do appreciate the consideration given in what I assume is just a proposed pre-designed concept, and I may have that wrong, but I appreciate the consideration given to parking. And I think I remember you mentioned that, yes, you're losing 11 spaces out of 28 on Gladstone specifically, but you're proposing to add 30 spaces on side streets. I think I remember that, and I do appreciate that. For the 11 spaces that may be lost on Gladstone, are those spaces paid parking?
Two of the spots that are being lost on Gladstone are paid parking. So those are the ones that are closer to Preston Street, and the rest of them are in non-paid parking areas.
All right. For the 30 proposed, if I have that correctly, for the 30 spaces you're proposing on side streets, would any of those be paid parking, or could any of those be paid parking?
I don't believe any of those would be paid parking, no.
So they would not be, but could they be? And I'm just trying to see if there's a net, if demand is there. The reason I'm asking is because I know that this project has a cost to it. In addition to, I appreciate that you have a net gain of parking from losing 11 and adding 30. And I'm wondering if through, making those revenue sites, there might be a net gain in terms of revenue as well. So this may not be a question for you, but for those 30 additional spaces, would you be able to even anticipate now that there could be enough demand for those, that those could be parking spaces?
Yeah, just before you go to that, I see VV over here, and I already know what the answer is probably going to be. Parking revenue goes into a parking. You can't mix all these things around. So
parking revenue for this project, just revenue in general.
Yeah, well, again, I'll let staff speak here, but they're going to tell you straight up the parking is its own separate bucket. But I can already read minds on this one.
Hopefully I'm aligned with your mind reading. So the city does have basically its municipal parking strategy that's basically approved by council. So that's really the guiding document around how we manage basically paid parking, and paid parking revenues all go towards that reserve. So at this point, I don't think it's about trying to move the parking spots to somewhere else, because we have to be able to still meet the intent of the policy in terms of why we have paid parking in the first place.
And again, I was not asking whether or not any potential net revenue could fund this project, just about whether or not that could be a corollary benefit, that there could be additional revenues from it. But I'll leave it at that. Forgive me for asking if this is on the TMP project list, but this is being advanced as a prioritization, and maybe this has been asked before, I may have missed it. Would there be any projects that would be bypassed by elevating this in terms of priority?
No, both of these projects were already included within phase 1 of implementation, so that first phase. So we're already intended to be prioritized in the way they are.
Thank you. And then my last question, on the truck route question, just a bit of a follow-up to my colleague, Councillor DeRoche's question. I think I heard you mention that for the section that would be removed from the truck route, there'd be, I think you said 15 trucks per hour of different sizes. I don't know enough about whether or not that's a high volume of trucks per hour. Is it?
I think we would consider that to be a lower number for compared to some of the other truck routes in the city.
Okay, but in support of the concern that Councillor DeRoche raised about, the impacts of that rerouting, I assume there would be, if you were to remove that from the truck route, there would be a redesignation of truck route for that. You mentioned that there are alternatives, but your design would not yet have a proposed redesignation of the route, would it?
And perhaps I'm not sure if I understand the question. Do you mean like, would we do changes to some of the other truck routes that already exist?
No, I beg your pardon. If, as part of this project, you would be removing a section of blocks from the truck route, I assume you have to redirect them somewhere. And so would this project at this stage already be proposing what that redesignated route is, or does that come down the road? No pun intended.
So we would, when this project moves ahead, and if we were to remove that truck route, we would change the signage along the corridor to indicate that it is no longer a truck route. And then at various junctions along the way, trucks would be informed of that. If that's kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, that is. I don't need to know what that proposed adjusted route is. It's not that. Can you anticipate that by rerouting that route a little bit, that there would be significant impacts to the ability of those trucks to deliver services and or goods in a timely fashion? Or would this be a minor impact?
I think we consider this to be a minor impact.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'd be really interested in understanding, we've had a couple delegates ask about expropriation of lands for active transportation or for intersection redesign. And I recently have gone through a project in my ward where we did choose to expropriate land in order to create a protected intersection. Can you help me to understand how the city determines when they do and do not expropriate land and where the money comes from? Because it certainly could be a nice to have idea, but I don't know whether, like, I don't know much about it. Could someone offer me a little education about how simple or how complicated it is to expropriate land? And maybe it's different ward by ward. I don't know. Maybe it's way more expensive downtown than it would be around where I am. And what's the legal ramifications of it? I think it's something we hear about with residents quite often, and maybe we could offer a little, peek behind the curtain, because it's not simple, but it could be really beneficial in a lot of cases.
So the city does acquire land for transportation projects through a variety of means. One of the main ways we do that is through development. So when development happens, we are able to get slivers of land along the road that we might need through that process. So that's one way. And then in some cases where we haven't been able to do that and we still need to proceed with the project, we would resort to expropriation, but usually that's kind of a last resort. So for example, on the Bank Street project through Councillor Brockington and Menard's ward, that involved some expropriation, but because there were no other alternatives to rebuilding the road in that area.
Through the chair, I would just add that as part of transportation project planning, it is a project by project kind of review of how to achieve the project objectives. And so for different types of, and with a general objective to work within city property wherever possible. There are also significant differences between sort of purchasing or expropriating a kind of small sliver of land along a frontage versus if the amount of land that is needed is going to significantly impact the parcel that we are needing land from. That's a much bigger challenge and one we would try to avoid wherever possible. And I think the comments on Gladstone being a constrained corridor with properties, kind of the actual building fairly close to the property line, makes it much less likely that we'll find those kind of small helpful slivers that can be acquired.
And I'll certainly add from my experience, the expropriation of land then becomes a legal matter, and legal life operates in a different time and space than other priorities at the City of Ottawa. And so there's often, I would expect, some kind of evaluation to be made there in terms of the expediency of the project versus the negotiation in expropriation. At least that's what I've witnessed in my 4 years. Things move a lot slower than I had first imagined. So thanks for the opportunity, because I think, yeah, from a resident perspective, it does seem quite straightforward to just be able to, add this much value for this much land. But when you come into a legal negotiation, unfortunately, you relinquish a great deal of control in terms of the transportation planning team. And that's not always desirable for when we're working with urgent needs like these. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, you're correct. Government's at a glacial pace, lawyers that are snail's pace. No disrespect, Taffy. So it's a very different world. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. Some of the comments that one of the comments that were raised was about the bus stops at Gladstone and Arthur. and I guess Bell going the other way. Has consideration been given to essentially raising the bike lane through the bus stop?
Yeah, through the chair, at 4 of the locations where there are bus stops on the corridor, we are doing exactly that. We're upgrading the bus stops so that the cycle track, or the bike lane cycle track, goes behind the bus stop and it's raised above the road grade to try to minimize that interaction between bus customers and cyclists. However, at the one at Arthur Street, we simply don't have enough space within the right of way to do that because there are certain guidelines that we have to follow. So that's why we've had to go ahead with the alternative route of having the buses stop in the bike lane.
Okay, so then the follow-up question to that is these bus stops are, so the bus stops at Bronson, Arthur / Bell and Preston, right, are 200 meters or so apart each. And in many of the other communities, including my own, like we're told that we have a standard of 400 meters or so per bus stop. So how I guess the alternate here, and if it's been, I don't know if it's been considered, would be to remove the bus stops so you have stops at Bronson and then Preston. Booth, sorry, I'm looking at the map now. Booth. Has that been thought of? And do you have any comments on that in general?
Through the project, we did work with OC Transpo and discuss exactly that with them, whether there's an opportunity to remove stops to improve service. And OC Transpo did agree to removing 2 of the stops, so 1 in each direction at Rochester, because between Rochester and Booth, it's only 125 meters. So they have agreed to consolidate those stops, which will help to improve transit reliability through that section. But they did not identify any other ones for consolidation.
Okay, no, I think this is, I know we're sort of in a functional design stage right now, and this is far from the community I represent, but I'll sort of just throw that in there as something to consider as an alternate if the bus stop stopping in the bike lane is truly a major concern there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And seeing no further, we'll go to wrap up with Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much, Chair. So I want to take you back to June 2023, where I woke up to the horrible news that a cyclist had been very seriously injured after being right-hooked by a truck at the corner of Gladstone and Rochester. The community got to work and rallied, and within a couple days had a huge rally demanding cycling safety on Gladstone Avenue. And that day, I met a woman named Nicole Grindel, whose son, Jean-Pierre Morin, was struck and killed by a truck in the exact same kind of accident at the exact same intersection in 2022. And as we heard from one of our delegates today, there have been many accidents between trucks and cyclists, a lot of them near misses in this corridor. Gladstone Avenue is a corridor that's impossible not to use when you're on a bike, especially to access at least 2 elementary schools. There's Elgin Street Public School just at Gilmore and Elgin, and then there's Louise Arbour Elementary School, plus there's Plant Bath for swimming lessons. And as you heard, nearly 50% of the residents in this neighborhood do not have a car, and they get around the neighborhood other ways. We're also expecting 7,000 to 10,000 new residents to be moving into this neighborhood, largely living in low or no car buildings, including a lot of Ottawa community housing. So the urgency of this project cannot be overstated. And thanks to the community advocacy in June 2023, I was able to bring a motion to this committee that was passed unanimously and also by council to accelerate cycling safety along Gladstone and to, as much as possible, remove the trucks from Gladstone. So this is a huge victory of community advocacy. I agree with all of you. I would like to see this lane be a straight shot, go all the way to Elgin Street. I've been told that could take 35 years if we were looking at sewer renewal, and could cost millions and millions of dollars if we were looking at land expropriation. And so given the choice between waiting that long or advancing safety as much as possible now, my advocacy and the community's advocacy has been, let's do this now. But let's be clear, accelerated, it still took 3 years to bring this plan to committee. So I don't even want to think about how long it would have taken without that community advocacy. So this has been a really tricky project. I want to thank city staff. I want to thank the community. I want to thank the mayor's office. I'm really proud of where we are now, but it's definitely not the end. I know I will continue to advocate for more connections to our grid. And I will just say we are very lucky in many ways that this project comes in just under the line of Bill 60 restrictions. There are other cycling projects that my office was working to advance, including Kent Street and Albert and Slater, that are now on hold indefinitely because provincial legislation is making it illegal to build them. But this is something we can do. It's something we can do relatively quickly. And like some of our delegates who came today, I share the visceral terror of what it's like to cycle with your baby on the back of your bike. It really makes it clear where the gaps in the network are, and we shouldn't be having to risk our lives to get from point A to point B. So I'm really hoping we can all support this project today, and I will continue to work with the community to make it even better in the future and to ensure that we can all get around safely in our neighborhood, no matter what mode of transportation we use. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for the wrap up. Thanks for your hard work. Thanks to staff. I think you pointed out many of the shifting landscapes we have right now under the provincial government. So it's almost take the win now while you can. What we call a win these days, I guess. So on that, is that item carried? Great, thank you.
Mayor, can I just dissent on recommendation two? Dissent on recommendation two, please. Thank you.
Great, noted. So we'll move along to our final item, which the IPD. Vice Chair Kitts, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to start by saying thank you to staff for taking this on, and particularly for being willing to look at how we can make some real changes to how we approach growth in our communities. You have to indulge me a little bit. I was reflecting quite a bit on this term last night as I was getting ready to send my final newsletter, as I know many of you were as well. But in the first half of the term, I felt very unheard on some of the issues I was raising on behalf of my community, but really on behalf of high growth suburban communities across the city. And I think we have become so focused on building units that we lost the plot a little bit on what it means to build a community. And you've all heard me say this 100 times, so I'll spare you the full speech today. But I do think that there is something important in the changes that are being proposed here. I continue to believe that road and network capacity should be a legitimate consideration when we are deciding how quickly and where we will allow development to proceed. But I do recognize that under provincial legislation, that's not a tool that the city has. And maybe that's something I will have to take up with the province. But I am genuinely grateful to staff for focusing on what is within our control. And I don't feel unheard anymore. I feel like there has been real cross-departmental recognition that something needs to change in how we approach growth in these rapidly building communities, and that we can't continue to build houses first and then wait for the infrastructure project or problems to emerge before figuring out how to solve them. And so something that seems relatively small, like being more proactive about intersection signalization, is actually a really significant change. Historically, we would wait for warrants to be met for an intersection to become increasingly unsafe, and then start a years-long review process, followed by a years-long design process, followed by a years-long construction process. And in the meantime, families are living there. Kids are walking to school. People are trying to get to transit. People are trying to cross the road, and leaving those intersections in that state for years could have devastating consequences. So while this may look like a relatively small change on paper, I think this is going to have a tremendous difference for communities. And so, this is some of the quiet work that doesn't get reported on by the media. It's not the sexy stuff, but it's the work that I think actually makes a huge difference in people's everyday lives. So I wanted to thank staff for taking the motion seriously, for doing the work, and for making these changes. I think more to come on that. But more than that, I just wanted to thank you for hearing me and for hearing the communities that I represent. At the beginning of the term, I didn't feel like we were having this conversation, and today I feel like we are. So that to me represents a very meaningful change, and it's something I'm very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kitts. And I find sewers and water sexy, so it's kind of different strokes for different folks. Councillor DeRoche.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just want to validate the concerns and the observation of Councillor Kitts and commend her for the work she's been doing. And I think as a collective, we have been saying this term of council that we need to be more nimble in a lot of our processes, and especially the growth projects. Because as Councillor Kitts says, we are building massive communities. We've pressed the easy button to build suburban development, but the gaps in infrastructure and services has really increased. And there's a great deal of excitement when we approve our master plans and we go to the community and say, we're doing this, and we wait because of environmental assessments, we wait because of design, we wait because of real estate. All of these conspire to have these projects move at a very slow rate. So I'm very encouraged as well by some of the work that staff have been doing to find a way to accelerate these projects through procurement. It took the return to work to really boost a couple projects like the Bowesville Park and Ride expansion. And that go and build it, just do it attitude needs to be sustained going forward so that we can build these complete communities that have homes, but also have the infrastructure. And that's what I tell residents in the community, Mr. Chair. There's a lot of push on us to build homes, but the infrastructure has to come with it as well. And I think we're on the track to do that now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So that completes the discussion on the IPD. So do we receive that? Saved. Thank you. So we'll move on to notice of motion. We have none, and we dealt with Councillor Dudas already. So we do have an inquiry though. Councillor Lowe. Oh, Councillor Johnson first. Apologies.
Yeah.
Residents are very concerned about the perceived lack of coordination between City of Ottawa construction projects, as well as with projects managed by third parties like power and telecommunications utilities and projects managed by seniors levels of government, such as MTO, other levels of government, such as MTO and the NCC. My office has been informed many times that city project managers were unaware of other city or third-party projects until we brought it to their attention. Lack of coordination is costly to the city because of the need to implement last-minute solutions like traffic calming, notifications, and even duplicated work like repaving. The city formerly used software used in Vista to help manage some projects and is now developing the application of the land management software as part of an update to the municipal application partnership software. This rollout of LMS and MAP is apparently not complete. Number one, what year did the city stop and why did the city stop using Invista for the coordination of construction projects? Number two, what processes are in place to coordinate construction projects across city departments to minimize impacts on traffic? Number three, how do city departments coordinate with external partners such as utilities and other levels of government to align construction activities? Number four, what technologies are currently being explored to improve the construction coordination process and when will they be implemented? And number five, what gaps have staff identified that need to be addressed to improve coordination of internal and external construction projects? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. And forgive me, now we'll go to Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, across the city, newly signalized intersections typically receive a basic set of signals with no turning signals. Often these intersections eventually require retrofits as traffic volumes increase with community growth or even changes in traffic patterns. Some retrofits happen years after initial installation, while others happen after a short amount of time. One, what is the total cost of a basic set of traffic signals with no turning signals along an arterial road? Assume it's an intersection with a collector street with good sightlines and no extra considerations. Two, what is the total cost of retrofitting a basic set of traffic signals? Same conditions as the first question, to include an advanced left signal. 3, the cost differential if the basic set of signals included advanced lefts at the time of the initial installation, I guess, versus a retrofit. 4, are there any regulatory barriers to including advanced left signals by default for traffic on the arterial road where it intersects a collector street or access to or from a major to or from a trip generator? Excuse me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Lowe. Seeing no other business, we'll go to adjournment. And just before I do that, I want to thank the committee coordinator. I know there's loads of media in the room right now, so this will be difficult, but I just want to thank all the staff and my vice chair and this entire committee. We don't always agree on everything, but we always have great discussions and come to a consensus on things. So I want to thank you for that. And I bid you a great day. If there's another meeting required before October 26th, we'll schedule one. Seeing that there won't be, this will be the next term of council before this committee rises again. So thank you very much.